I spent nights in forest all over the country, but the Appalachian Mountains are different. They don't just surround you, they press in on you like the trees themselves lean closer the moment you stop paying attention. The air here feels thick, almost damp, even when the sky is clear. And at night, you get the sense that the darkness has weight. That evening is burned into my memory. The campfire hissed instead of crackled, the smoke curling low as if it was trying not to rise. It was the kind of night where even the flames seemed reluctant to make noise. We hadn't even heard the word Palecrawler yet, but the forest already felt wrong.
There were 4 of us, me, Ben, Jake, and Sarah. We'd hiked up to a ridge, planning to spend 2 nights before heading back to town. Ben had grown up in the foothills, knew the old trails like the back of his hand. He was the kind of guy who could walk you to the edge of a cliff without a map and tell you the exact year a landslide had taken the trees. That night, we were sitting in a rough circle, boots pointed toward the fire, passing a dented flask of whiskey around. Our laughter was too loud for the quiet that surrounded us. We were halfway through the usual ghost stories, the kind that make you laugh as much as they make you shiver, when Ben's voice cut through the warmth. You ever heard of Palecrawlers? He didn't look at us. His eyes stayed fixed on the fire, and his tone wasn't playful. Sarah's brow furrowed. Jake smirked like he was expecting a punchline, but I felt my stomach tighten. The old folks don't talk about them unless they have to, Ben continued, and never in daylight. They're pale as bone, long as shadows, moving on all fours like that's the only way they know how. They can't see, but they don't need to. They use sound, clicking noises, like a bat. If you hear those clicks close, it means they've already found you. Don't move, don't breathe, and whatever you do, don't let them touch you. The fire popped, and I flinched harder than I should have. Ben told us he'd heard the story from a man named Carter, who ran a gas station in a hollow 20 miles from there. Carter was an old hunter, wiry and weathered, the kind of man who could light a fire in the rain. One fall morning, Carter had been in his blind before sunrise when the woods went dead still. No wind, no birds, not even the groan of trees in the cold. Then, click, 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 moving low through the leaves, circling him. For nearly an hour it went on, until just after the first light. Then it stopped. Carter turned his head and saw it crouched between 2 trees, long arms, too many joints, elbows bending the wrong way, skin so pale it seemed to drink in the light, the head tilted as if it was listening. It tapped the ground with long bony fingers, 3 quick taps, then crawled backward into the brush without a sound.
No one spoke for a while after that. Even Jake kept quiet. The fire seemed smaller, the night deeper. Eventually we forced a laugh or two, told a few more stories, and let the whiskey dull the edges of our nerves. By midnight we drifted into our tents. I woke hours later, not to a sound, to the absence of one. The forest was silent, the air still. Even the embers seemed to glow less, as if the light was being swallowed. I lay on my back, trying to hear past my own breathing. Then it came. Click, click, click. Faint, slow, somewhere out beyond the edge of the firelight. I told myself it was just a branch tapping in the breeze, maybe a raccoon stepping over fallen twigs, but the pattern was too regular, too deliberate. Ben shifted in his tent. Jake coughed softly. Sarah rolled over. None of them said anything, so I stayed quiet too, not wanting to be the one to admit I heard it. The clicks moved, not toward us but around us. Wide arcs through the leaves, never close enough to see, just far enough that you could believe it was nothing. I almost laughed to myself. The mind plays tricks out here. Every sound becomes a footstep, every shadow a figure. But the thing about tricks is, sometimes they're not. After a while, the sound faded entirely. I told myself it was nothing, pulled the sleeping bag up to my chin, and stared at the faint orange glow of the fire until my eyes closed again. I stayed awake for a while after that, but fell asleep eventually. When we stepped out of our tents that morning, Ben was already crouched near the tree line, staring at the ground like he'd found something he wished he hadn't. "Come here," he called, his voice low. In the dirt were handprints, not human. The fingers were too long, the palms too narrow. They were pressed so deep into the soil you'd think whoever left them weighed twice as much as they should. Nobody spoke for a while. We busied ourselves with small tasks, stoking the fire back to life, boiling water for coffee, but every few minutes I'd catch one of us glancing at those prints. Around midday, Sarah froze mid-step and sniffed the air. "Do you smell that?" she asked. It was faint but distinct, metallic, sour, like blood on old copper. We all smelled it, but none of us said a single word. The next day felt almost normal. The sun came up warm, the ridge bathed in gold, and for a few hours it was easy to believe that whatever we'd heard the night before had been nothing more than a trick of the dark. Ben kept his tone light as he brewed coffee over the fire. Jake whittled at a stick, humming tunelessly. Even Sarah, who'd been quiet since we'd arrived, cracked a small smile when a hawk dipped low over the ridge. The forest still felt different, heavier somehow, but we all leaned into the hope that we'd just imagined it. When the evening came, we ate early. The fire popped and sent embers spiraling into the cooling air. We sat in a loose circle, trading half-hearted jokes, avoiding the subject entirely. It was only when the last embers of daylight slipped away that someone thought they heard it again. Click, click, click. Faint, far off, almost carried by the wind. We all froze for a moment, straining to hear, but it didn't come again. Ben laughed softly, though it sounded forced. "See? Just your imagination." Jake agreed too quickly. Sarah just shrugged and poked at the fire. And for a while, it was easy to believe that maybe he was right. I don't know what time I woke up, but it wasn't to a sound. It was to a smell. Thick, rotten, metallic. The reek of blood left out in the heat for too long. It clung to the back of my throat, made my stomach twist. I blinked into the dark of my tent, pulse already racing, ears straining for anything beyond my own breath. Click, click, click. It was right outside. The nylon of my tent trembled, just slightly, as though something massive had shifted its weight beside me. The clicks came again, slower now, deliberate. I could hear breath between them, deep, wet inhalations, followed by long exhalations that seemed to stretch forever. Somewhere off to my left came a faint crack, wood snapping under something heavy, then a low scrape, like fingernails dragging through dirt. Every muscle in my body locked. My hand twitched toward the zipper of my sleeping bag, but I stopped, afraid even that sound would give me away. The clicking changed pitch, faster, then slower again, like it was mapping me in the dark. I couldn't tell how long it lasted. Minutes, hours. The fire outside had burned low, but I didn't dare move to see if anyone else was awake. The smell grew stronger, so strong my eyes watered. When the clicks finally began to fade, retreating into the tree line, I didn't feel relief, just a different kind of fear. Because silence in these woods isn't safety, it's waiting. By the time the first gray light seeped through the trees, I still hadn't slept a second. My muscles ached from lying rigid all night, my eyes raw from staring at nothing. When I finally unzipped my tent, the air outside was cold and damp, thick with the smell of wet leaves, but beneath it still lingered that faint metallic tang. Ben was already up, standing over the fire pit. What was left of the firewood had been scattered. The half-burned logs dragged several feet from where we'd left them. Jake's cooler was overturned. The lid snapped clean off like it had been wrenched open by something strong. Sarah's pack had been pulled halfway into the tree line, its contents spilling out, clothes, a flashlight, and her tin coffee mug, bent almost flat. We all just stood there for a moment, taking it in. "Jesus," Jake muttered. "That looks like a bear." "Bears don't drag stuff like that," Ben said, kicking one of the half-burned logs back toward the pit. "And they sure as hell don't bend metal like that." "Could have been a black bear," Sarah offered, though her voice was unsure. "They've been known to—" "No," Ben cut her off. "This wasn't a bear." I hesitated before speaking, my throat dry. "Last night, I heard it, walking around the camp." Jake raised an eyebrow. I swallowed. Clicking, faint at first, way out past the tree line, then closer. I thought maybe one of you was screwing around, but it wasn't. It circled the camp, slow, stopped a couple of times. I think it was listening. Nobody said anything. Sarah stared at the bent coffee mug. Jake forced a laugh, but it was thin. "You're telling me you heard the boogeyman creeping around our tents?" he said. I didn't answer. Ben was still watching me, his expression unreadable. "You should have woken me up," he said finally. "I didn't want to move," I said. "Didn't want it to know I was awake." Sarah rubbed her arms. "If it was real, maybe it's gone now." But Ben just kept looking toward the trees, like he was trying to see something that wasn't there anymore. The rest of the day was wrong. The sun never seemed to fully break through the haze. We didn't talk much, and when we did, it was mostly short, clipped sentences. Every time a twig snapped somewhere in the woods, we all froze for just a fraction too long before pretending it was nothing. By nightfall, the unease had settled into our bones. None of us said it out loud, but we all stayed closer to the fire that evening, our tents drawn into a tighter circle. We didn't tell stories this time. We just listened to the woods. By dusk, the ridge felt smaller, like the trees had crept closer when we weren't looking. We ate in silence. The fire threw narrow, shivering shadows over our faces, and each snap of the wood felt too loud. No one talked about the night before. We didn't need to. The first clicks came when the sky was still a deep cobalt, the last smear of light hanging over the trees. Click, click, click. Faint, slow, almost casual, but close enough to make every head turn toward the dark. Sarah's knees pulled tight to her chest. Jake froze mid-breath. Ben's eyes flicked from shadow to shadow, the firelight glinting in them like something cornered. The sound moved, circling, measuring. Sometimes it was far to the left, sometimes almost behind us, but never rushing. Patient, certain. The wind shifted, and the smell came with it. Metallic, sour, layered over something rotten. It clung to the back of my throat like oil. Ben's whisper was a thread of air. Don't move, don't breathe. We didn't. The fire's glow trembled over our still faces. My heartbeat felt so loud I was sure it would give me away. The clicking grew louder, angling toward Jake's side of the camp. Then it stopped. The silence after was worse than the sound. For a moment, nothing. Then 3 quick taps, right at the edge of the dark. Click, click, click. Sarah's eyes met mine. In the flicker of the fire, I saw them glassy with tears she was too afraid to let fall. A slow inhale came from the dark, wet and deep, like something drawing us in through its teeth. The exhale followed, long enough to make the night feel endless. Leaves shifted. Something heavy settled into the dirt. Jake's shoulders twitched, the smallest movement, maybe an inch, but it was enough. The clicks answered instantly, sharp and fast, zeroing in. Jake's breath hitched. Then, without warning, he moved. A desperate, jerking lunge toward the narrow trail we'd come up, like instinct had ripped control from his body. "Jake," Ben hissed, but too late. Jake's boots pounded over the dirt, crashing through underbrush. For a heartbeat, the forest held still, and then the clicks erupted from every side at once, rapid, relentless, closing in. We didn't move, couldn't. Every nerve screamed to run, but the first step would be the last. My lungs ached from holding air. The muscles in my neck trembled. Sarah's hands were clamped over her mouth. Her eyes streamed silently, the tears cutting pale lines through the soot on her face. Her shoulders shook once, violently, before she forced them still. The chase ripped through the dark. Jake's ragged breathing, branches snapping, the low, smooth drag of something on all fours, always just behind him. The clicks rose and fell like sonar, adjusting, tracking, tightening. Then Jake screamed, short, sharp, cut off mid-breath. A crash, a wet impact. The sound of movement changed. No more running, only a thrashing struggle, the staccato thump of limbs hitting the earth. The fire cracked and I flinched. Just my eyes, nothing else. From the dark came sounds I'll never forget. The slow, efficient tear of something pulling apart meat, the shift of weight on wet ground, the breath between mouthfuls. It wasn't frenzied, it was methodical. The smell rolled in thicker, hot and coppery. My vision swam. My body begged to gag, but I clamped down so hard my teeth ached. Minutes passed like hours. Eventually the clicks returned, slower now, circling once more, almost lazy. Then, without warning, they stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable. We waited and waited. Only when an hour had passed without a sound did we move. The night pressed in on us, thick and breathless. Ben's whisper cut through the dark. "Pack, now." We moved without speaking. Every zipper, every strap was handled slow and careful, even with our hands shaking. We stuffed gear into packs without folding, left half our things behind. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting out. When our bags were on our backs, we turned from the fire pit and slipped into the trail. Not a word, not a light, just the shuffle of boots on dirt and the pounding in my ears. Only when the black line of the fire road appeared ahead, pale gravel under the moon, did we run. No plan, no looking back, just the kind of sprint that only comes when you've been holding your breath for hours. We didn't stop until the trees thinned and the road stretched empty in both directions. The silence here was different, open, weightless, but none of us said a word. We just kept walking, and none of us ever camped in the wild again.